In this WrestleTalk news, could Sasha Banks and Naomi be leaving WWE? Are WWE dropping the women's tag team titles? And Tempest reviews last night's episode of NXT 2.0.
Support WrestleTalk!
It has now been just over 2 weeks since Sasha Banks and Naomi made the decision to walk out of a WWE Monday Night Raw taping just as the show was going live on air. The reasons for the walkout, according to various reports, vary from displeasure at booking to contract expiring in the near future, and it's their contracts which are once again in the news. A new Fightful Select report has noted there has been little to no communication between WWE and Banks and Naomi since the infamous walkout, and WWE has cancelled all travel plans for the women for the foreseeable future. This would seem to indicate WWE has no plans of bringing Banks or Naomi back anytime soon. Dave Meltzer reported they are currently both suspended without pay, and this could have a significant impact on their futures. While they didn't confirm this report, Fightful Select notes that a WWE higher-up told them that if the suspension is without pay, it could mean their contracts have not been frozen, which is something WWE tends to do when stars are suspended, injured, or out for long periods of time. Meltzer previously reported Naomi's contract is up soon, and former WWE writer Kazim Famouyid has also claimed Banks does not have long left in her current deal either. So, if you do a bit of quick math, if they are suspended without pay, their contracts aren't frozen, their contracts are up soon, and WWE doesn't want to talk to them anymore, perhaps they're simply going to be released when their contracts expire. We don't have specific dates for when their contracts are supposed to expire, but the longer no one is talking, the more likely a future release appears to be. It's a bit like when your girlfriend says, "We're going on a break." The longer she doesn't text you, the more likely it's never not going to be a break. Not that I know how that feels. And if the former WWE Women's Tag Team Champions are leaving, could the belts themselves be leaving too? Following their suspension, the report was that WWE were planning a women's tag team title tournament to name the new champions, with teams from both the main roster and NXT set to take part in the 4-team tournament. Honestly, I'm pretty surprised there were actually 4 teams to choose from. However, speaking on yesterday's Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer noted that the tournament is currently dead. So it's time for me to take a train to Speculation Station, so please mind the gap and ride the train with me. If the tournament is no longer happening, and let's face it, WWE has never actually cared about the women's tag belts, could this be the moment they simply give up on them entirely? The women's tag division has always been made up of random teams without any chemistry, and no matter how many times Michael Cole tells us they are best friends, it doesn't make it true. Of course, the tournament could be resurrected further down the line, but there are barely any teams on the main roster and only a few in NXT, so if any belt is going to disappear, it's probably going to be the women's tag belts. It's a huge shame. Just remember all the great women's tag teams like, well, you know who was a great pairing? Well, at least the belts looked really, unusual. And speaking of things that look unusual, here is Tempest with the NXT 2.0 review.
Man, fuck this show. What's going on, WrestleTalk friends and fans? Tempest is back with another review of NXT 2.0 in about 5 minutes. So this show opened up with a tag team match, this time pitting Pretty Deadly against Roderick Strong and Damon Kemp. The last tag opener wasn't very good, the one before that was very good, this one is right in the middle. Pretty Deadly play their roles just fine, but I haven't latched onto them as tag team champions. And with Roddy Strong asking for his release, he's basically signed on to lose every match on TV until his contract expires. At least that's what I figure is gonna happen. Has he won a match since that story broke? Editors, has he won? But by the end of the show, I did enjoy this finish as Pretty Deadly tried to hit Roderick Strong with one of the belts, only for Julius Creed to get on the apron and take the belt shot on Roddy's behalf. He did this despite Roderick Strong telling the Creeds not to interfere in his match because Roddy was trying to bait Pretty Deadly into hitting him with the belts so he could win by disqualification. Twice on this show, people tried to say how important it was to win a match by disqualification, which I would appreciate if I thought it was important to win a match in NXT at all. But I do appreciate the extra attention to detail in this opening match, and I will give this a 3 out of 5. Duke Hudson set up a match with Solo Sikoa as Josh Briggs set up a match with Grayson Waller. All the while, Legado del Fantasma and Tony D'Angelo's family have agreed that whichever team loses it in your house has to join the other. Legado del Fantasma's never getting out of NXT, are they? Cora Jade then beat Elektra Lopez for spilling her popcorn. I don't want to be harsh to people on this show, but this match wasn't good. Again, I'm not expecting many in NXT to have more than a 2 out of 5 match, but when a 2 out of 5 match happens, I have to call it a 2 out of 5 match. These two didn't seem to click at all in this match. Their offense didn't land, it didn't look fluid. fluid, and it just wasn't a good match. Poor Jade won with a top rope senton, and I am tired of talking about this match. It wasn't very good. It gets a 1 out of 5. Sangha of the Thunder became Sangha the Respectful Giant. He gave a very kind pep talk to Wesley before his match with Zion Quinn. I thought they executed a perfectly fine story in this match. I just didn't think they did it very interestingly. Wesley's a really good babyface in peril, but I don't know what to make of Zion Quinn at this point. He's certainly got a good look. There's no one saying he's not going to have a good look, but he sang Sexy Boy one time, and I think I just got hypnotized by him and thought he was more entertaining than he was for the last 6 months. His matches always feel very clunky, and he's had matches with enough good wrestlers that haven't turned out good for me to think that there's a common denominator here. This was another quick match, and after getting squashed for basically the whole thing after a quick start, Wesley was able to roll up Zion Quinn for the win. I'm a poet, and someone told me that once. I absolutely thought Wesley was going to lose this match, but thankfully he didn't. That being said, this wasn't much more than a squash match, just with the finish reversed. It's a fine storyline progression, but as a match, nothing special. 2 out of 5. Joe Gacy cuts a Spooky Man promo and Braun Breaker's upset about it, and then we got the Toxic Attraction Summit. I think your enjoyment of this segment will rest on how you feel about one Wendy Chu. This is a really hard show to review sometimes, because if I say that this is garbage, then I piss off the NXT fans that like it. But I can't say that it's anything but. I can't talk about this segment. I have to recap it, and it's so awful. Toxic Attraction have been cutting the same promos for the last year, and they never say anything. They're making references to the Wizard of Oz now. Oh boy, there's a topical reference. Way to keep your finger on the pulse, JC Jane. I can't take anyone in this segment seriously when on one hand you have Caden and Katana saying that they've been through hell together. No, you haven't. You've wrestled 13 matches in the last 12 months, and the longest one was 13 minutes. And while you've got one tag team talking about being through hell with one another, you've got their partner in a onesie saying, sign the contract, over and over and over again. And then meanwhile, Mandy Rose is trying to cut a very serious promo about how she has the most pressure. This whole segment was awful. And when it couldn't get worse, it broke down into potentially the worst brawl I may have ever seen. It was very narrowly not that, as Katana Chance managed to hit a cool flip dive, and that earns you enough points to save yourself from the absolute bottom of the barrel. But the punches thrown by Mandy Rose. You thought that one creeper on the episode of AEW Dynamite was bad? This is bad. My jaw dropped when I saw those punches. Oh, and the brawl was started because Wendy Chu hit Mandy Rose with a super soaker again. 1 out of 5, I'm moving on. We then had another fairly quick match as Solo Sikoa beat Duke Hudson. Solo Sikoa is one of the most main roster ready stars on NXT 2.0, and given the state of the SmackDown roster at the moment, I have no idea why he isn't there. After a short back and forth match, he got the win with the frog splash. I guess that DQ win didn't mean much after all. We then followed that short match with another short match as Josh Briggs took on Grayson Waller. This was another match that just felt off to me. It was the little things in this match, like where they fall after they bump into each other. It just didn't feel like they were totally on the same page. And again, there really wasn't much to this one either, as this was another short match that ended with a distraction finish as Von Wagner made his way out to distract Josh Briggs. This distraction allowed Grayson Waller to hit his rolling stunner for the win, and then Von Wagner attacked Josh Briggs until Brooks Jensen made the save. I'm sorry, I'm not going to cheer for Brooks Jensen. You're not gonna just sweep that virgin stuff under the rug. Weren't y'all like going somewhere with that? I think I forgot to give the last match a rating, so that one gets a 3, this one gets a 2. I like the last one a little bit more. There was no Von Wagner. We then had our second women's match on the show as Ivy Nile took on Kiana James. I would really like to see Ivy Nile get the next shot at the NXT Women's Championship after all of this is said and done. Either her or Roxanne Perez. Both answers would be perfect. Ivy Nile was really aggressive on this show, and it seems like the frustrations being felt within Diamond Mine are coming out in her matches. I really like that because it starts to weave the backstage segments and the matches together, and in NXT you just don't see that often. Ivy Nile won with a suplex, and then afterwards Pretty Deadly came out to try and intimidate her, only for them to be run off by the Creed brothers. This match was fine, but again, just not long enough to be anything special. It gets a 2 out of 5. But thankfully, this show was then saved by its main event as Cameron Grimes took on Nathan Frazier. I feel like if you walk down the street and just listen to Nathan Frazier's entrance music, you would just have main character energy. These two had the best NXT main main event that I've seen in quite a while, and that doesn't surprise me at all because Cameron Grimes and Nathan Frazier are two of the best wrestlers on WWE's roster, regardless of the brand. Carmelo Hayes was on commentary for this match, which bothered me for some reason. I can't quite put my finger on why. But this really was such a deviation from everything else that we'd seen on this show. NXT matches are sloppy. They're developmental matches. They're not supposed to be polished, but when you get a main event like this that is polished, you really see the difference. All of these guys' moves were just so crisp and clean, and it's what I want in all of my matches. Can't I just watch these two wrestle for an hour every week? Please? I don't know about you, but I would watch it. 2 hours of these two? Hell yeah. But what I loved about this was a perfect match that could just have a clean finish. It's not at all unreasonable to have Cameron Grimes, the North American champion, beat Nathan Frazier, the upstart, and have it not damage either guy. Having a super competitive, super entertaining match with the champion does you a lot of favors, and Nathan Frazier did himself another Frazier on this night with an excellent main event, and afterwards, Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams tried to hit the ring, only for Cameron Grimes to stand tall at the end of the show. This was a very excellent main event. It gets a 5 out of 5. This show, on the other hand, holy shit. Thankfully, NXT still has really good specials, so I don't have any doubt that NXT in your house might be good. That being said, 2 Toxic Attraction matches, but that doesn't make up for this show, which just is pitiful most of the time. That main event is going to boost this show up to a 2 out of 5, and yes, you heard that correctly. This got boosted to a 2 out of 5. And that just about wraps it up from me. If you want to hear more about this episode of NXT, make sure you check out today's Mocha 2.0 podcast over on WrestleTalk podcast, and subscribe to Parts of Unknown, where you can watch Quizzlemania.
In this WrestleTalk news, Bray Wyatt teases a WWE return, WWE want MJF, and even more AEW titles. Subscribe and enable notifications to always on for daily wrestling news videos, especially if you're WWE wrestler Seth Rollins, because then you wouldn't have to publicly join AEW's live streams to find out what's going on.
Support WrestleTalk!